Welcome to the 1 Minute Apologist. We interview the world's leading apologists to provide credible answers to curious questions.
Frank, what if there is no hell, or was no hell?
If there is no hell, then some of the greatest injustices in history will never be righted. You could look at the Holocaust, you could look at Hitler, Stalin, pedophiles, murderers who never get their just desserts. There is no justice if there is no hell. In fact, I learned of a man, I met him in South Dakota last year. A supposed friend of his was sexually molesting his daughter from the time she was age 4 to the time she was age 14. And the man came to one of my events and was so distraught over it. He was also distraught over the fact that his 2 sons, when they learned that their sister had been sexually molested for 10 years and they didn't know about it either, they actually left Christianity. They said, there is no God. If there is a good God, he would have never allowed this to happen to our sister. And so I said to this man, I said, Steve, his name's Steve, I said, Steve, I don't know when the right time is, but when the right time happens, I want you to say this to your sons. Number 1, if there is no God, what that man did to your sister isn't really wrong. It's just your opinion. Because if there is no standard beyond humanity we call goodness, and by definition that's what God is, goodness, then you can't say what he did to your sister is really wrong. It's just a matter of opinion. Secondly, the man is not in jail who did this. Why? Because every time the trial comes up, the young girl who was abused psychologically checks out. She can't testify against him. So he's still walking the streets and everybody knows he's a pedophile. And so I said to Steve, I want you to say this to your sons. If there is no God and there is no afterlife, then the man who did this to your daughter or your sister, in terms of your sons, the man who did this to your sister will never get justice. Do you really think that's the way the universe is? The very reason you're upset is because you know a great injustice has been done. Rightfully so. You're upset about it. But there can't be injustice unless there's justice, and there can't be justice unless God exists, because he's the only one that can guarantee justice. And you're upset trying to say God doesn't exist, when in fact he's the only one that can bring justice ultimately. So if you're out there and you're upset about anything, you think there's any injustice out there, it could be anything, then you actually have evidence for God.